Hello, hello. Welcome back to Talkin' Tunes, and today on Talkin' Tunes, we shall be talking about the 10 tunes on a very strange album from 1986, a collaboration between Genesis guitarist Steve Hackett and Yes guitarist Steve Howe, GTR. Now, first, of course, we're going to get into some history because I kind of care about these two. Having left Genesis in 1977, Steve Hackett since then had been making solo albums, several of which were pretty good, but by the 80s, he was making albums that, yes, were pleasing fans of his, and fans of 70s Genesis, but weren't selling as well as they used to, which is understandable. Times are changing. Similarly, after the collapse of his lineup of Yes in 1980, Steve Howe had gone on to form a different band, Asia, with former Yes keyboardist Jeff Downes and former Emerson Lake and Palmer drummer Carl Palmer and former King Crimson guitarist and vocalist John Wetton, they made a couple albums in the early '80s, but Steve Howe found himself a little bit unsatisfied and left the band, and thus, coincidentally, both band members found themselves in need of a project, ran into each other somewhere, I don't remember where, and basically decided, hey, maybe we should collab on an album, and this is the end result. Is it good? Well, let's just get into it. Song number one, when the heart rules the mind. When the heart rules the mind. Typical 80s prog opening. It's certainly more Hackett than Howe. And again, an 80s prog opening, whilst not as good as a 70s prog opening, is still sometimes better than most other things on the charts at the time. However, after the intro, it's difficult to differentiate from everything else on the radio. Howe's solo sounds like it was from a different song as well. It's just like, what the hell? What happened? It's so strange. It sounds like it was plucked from something else. It doesn't fit in with this. Song number 2, The Hunter. This album was produced by Jeff Downes. This is his... And he gets a writing credit here, and weirdly enough, it's not credited, at least on the Wikipedia page. I don't physically own the album, so I can't verify this. Strangely enough, it's not credited to either Steve Hackett or Steve Howe at all. There's another generic 80s intro. The entire song is like that. I literally can't tell who's playing guitar for the most of the song. It's very mad. I'm going to check that it's still recording, because it sounds like it stopped. Yes, it's still going. Okay, oops. Sorry about that, folks. But we just roll with it here on this channel. Song number 3, Here I Ate. There's definitely sort of that Asian, the only way I can know how to describe it is it's a type thing. But it's got that sort of going for about 5 seconds, and then it descends into into another 80s generic pop rock nonsense. At least both solos fit. Both Steve Howe and Steve Hackett play the same riff, which is cool, but it's boring. It's boring. There's worse. You could definitely listen to worse music with your time, but you could definitely listen to better music with your time. Song number 4, Sketches in the Song. This is the first proggy title, and then this is the first track that sounds like it was actually made by a prog band member, which it was. It's a typical Steve Howe solo guitar piece. Nothing to write home about, but it's better than everything else. I'm not joking. Song number 5, Jekyll and Hyde. This is definitely a Hackety tune. The intro is cool, but then again, it depends into 80s shit. And then these are the dumbest lyrics about aging I've ever heard in my goddamn life. It's so boring. And here we are. We are halfway through this album, an album which sees two amazing prog rock gods, Steve Hackett and Steve Howe, unite. This album should be oozing excellence. You should be able to hear it before you even take it out of the sleeve or before you even press the play button on Spotify or YouTube or wherever the hell you're listening to it. But it's like, what the hell? What the hell? What's going on? My pants should be white by this point. And instead, I'm just like, bored. I'm just bored. Song number 6. You can still get through. This is the most 80s thing I've heard so far. And then it's an instrumental, but after like 2 minutes, it just becomes After the Ordeal from Selling England by the Pound. What the hell? And frankly, that's the best guitar moment on the album. And it's not even technically from this album. It's a new recording. It's not like they went in and just sampled After the Ordeal from, the Selling England by the Pound tapes. But it's like, it's just like, what the fuck? What the fuck? It's just, it's just After the Ordeal from Selling England by the Pound with some 80s drumming and dipped in a light layer of reverb. What the fuck? That's the second half of this song. Song number 7. Reach Out, in parentheses, Never Say No. More generic 80s shit and another boring solo. Song number 8, Toe the Line. It starts as a classical guitar duet between the Steves to start, and then it becomes an acoustic 80s ballad, and then it becomes a generic 80s ballad. Yeah. Song number 9, Hackett to Pitts. Hey, guess who wrote this one? I'd be able to tell what was going on for the first couple seconds if it wasn't basically deep fried in reverb. It's a Hackett solo that sounds like a Hackett solo. Again, he's done it better himself. He did it better with Genesis. It's very, very meh. And then song number 10, Imagining. It's got a pastoral intro that is cool. It becomes something actually proggy for a couple minutes, and then it becomes generic 80s shit again. And then it's the only song I've ever heard a boring guitar duel on. How? Just how? Well, no. Howe and Hackett. How did Howe and Hackett make something boring? Boring. These two guys are amazing guitarists and did amazing things both before and after this. How did they make it this boring? I don't know if I can totally blame this on the fact that it was 1986. Yes, the 80s, a lot of the stuff in the 80s sounded very similar to each other, and it's aged horribly, and I can tell that this was made in the 80s. But I don't think that's the whole problem with the album. It's like, it feels to a degree like neither Steve was bringing his A game. It feels like, none of them, whoever was in charge of lyrics at any point was bringing their A game or could come up with something. It feels like the whole band, it feels like both Steves were just in a funk. And and it doesn't really help that the guys they, drafted to fill out the rest of the sound, aside from, guitars and stuff, none of these guys really feel like they would have saved it. The singer, Max Bacon, this is the most popular thing he ever did. And he sounds like everybody else from the 80s. Sorry. On bass, Phil Spaulding, and on drums, Jonathan Mover. Again, guys that clearly have talent, but just weren't the right guys for the job. I feel like if this album had been made 5 years earlier or 10 years later, just been made at a different point in time, just been made a little earlier or a little later, it would have been something cool. But it's bogged down by, the Steves, again, not bringing their A game. The 80s production really dampens the possibilities here. Like the whole thing is dipped in a thin layer of reverb, ranging in reverb from thin to borderline deep fried in it. It's just, I can't say it's bad, but an album that, again, should be making me jizz myself like 3 times a song comes with 0 jizz-worthy moments and just leaves me feeling disappointed. It doesn't feel like I necessarily wasted my time, but I certainly don't need to listen to it again anytime soon. And it's very, very meh, and half the time I can't tell which Steve is playing guitar, and I know these guys' styles, because I've listened to a lot of Genesis and a lot of Yes, and a lot of these two guys just on their own. But, yeah. Yeah, so the band would, GTR would tour, but after the conclusion of that tour, it didn't happen again, and I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? I'm okay with that. However, about 30 years later, Steve Hackett would again collaborate with another member of Yes, and we'll be looking at that next week. Thank you all very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a like on it. If you have something to add, if you disagree with me, please feel free to do so in the comment section down below. If you want to continue along this musical journey with me, please feel free to subscribe. If you want to hear me talk about something other than music, I have a podcast with 2 of my buddies. It's called Dorkies. I will leave a link to the most recent episode of that in the description down below. And if you want to hear what I happen to be listening to that day, or a 15-second segment at least, you can follow me on Instagram. I will leave a link to that in the description down below. I post a song on my story there every single day. And with that, I would like to remind you all to stay weird and keep jamming. See you in the next one. Take care.